Good morning. We're learning Tractate Eruvin, Daf Chav Gimel, page 23. The name of the chapter is Oisin Pasin Perik Sheni, second chapter, Oisin Pasin. So we discussed the Mishnah previously. The Mishnah said that whether the pit is in the public domain or it's owned by many, or the well is in the public domain and owned by many, or public water hole or public well, we may erect boards. But if it's a private water hole, you need to make a mechitza of 10 tefachim high. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava said, we are not erecting boards except for the public well, and for all other types of watering places, we must erect a belt 10 tefachim high surrounding the watering places. Amar Yosef, Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Halacha K'Rabuda ben Bava, Halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Which is similarly the more strict halacha, allows the use of well boards only around a public well. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Utu Pasi V'Rois, Ela Lever Ma'im Chaim Belvad. Well boards were not permitted except for a well of spring water. Utzricha and both statements of Rabbi Yosef in the name of Shmuel are necessary. So there's well of non-spring water and there's well of spring water. Tzricha. So he wants us. He says that you're only allowed to use the boards for the spring water well. If he had informed us that the halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, I might have said that Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, I might have said that Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava actually permits well boards for all public watering places, even collected rainwater in a water hole. And that which the Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava allows well boards only for a public well, it is meant to exclude a public water hole. To exclude the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that even a private well may be enclosed by well boards. Rabbi Yosef therefore informs us that well boards were not permitted except for a well of spring water. And if we had only informed us that well boards are permitted only for a well of spring water, I might have said that there is no difference between public well and a private one. Both are permitted. Rabbi Yosef therefore informs us that halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, who disqualifies even a private well from the leniency of well boards. Both statements of Rabbi Yosef were necessary to express the halacha clearly. So from here we see it's only permitted to put a well boards on a public well and also on a well that has spring water.
So that's even private.
What?
If it has spring water, it could be on the Rishus Yochid also.
He doesn't even bring that option. He doesn't. When it comes to private, he doesn't even discusses whether it's well spring or not. It seems like according to Rabbi Bava, you should not make any well boards on private.
Okay, fine.
Additionally, Rabbi Bava said, "Agina v'akarpav she'en shivim amo v'shirayim al ein amo v'shirayim amukofes godol gava asor tefachim." A garden or a karpaf, which is 70 amis. A karpaf is also an enclosure, which is 70 amis and a fraction, by 70 amis and a fraction. Meaning it's a 70 amis and a little bit more. Shiraim, extra, has a little bit more. Garden or this enclosure, which 70 amis and a fraction by 70 amas and a fraction, and 70 amas and a fraction. 70 by 70, but a little bit more than 70 by 70. Umukov is godly gavah, which is surrounded by a fence that is 10 tefachim high. Metaltem b'seicho, one may carry in it. Ulvat sheva shemeiro oy veistiro, provided it contains watchman's booth, or a dwelling. Oy, another option, shetes muchalayir, has to be near the city. If it does not meet this qualification, carrying is prohibited. Even if the karpaf contains nothing more than a water hole, ditch, or cave, one may carry in it. Even if the karpaf does not contain any of these, one may carry in it. Provided the karpaf is only 70 amis and a fraction by 70 amis and a fraction, but not larger. So, all the Tanoim have permitted carrying in an area of 2 beiseah. The Mishnah Daf discusses whether this is qualified by the shape of a karpaf. Rabbi Akiva has already stated that it must be a square. Rabbi Lezer says if the length was more than the width, even by one amma, if it's not square, one may not carry in it. Even if its length is twice its width, one may carry in it. Obviously, the Gemara will go into why, but so far we see the two opinions over here. Opinion of Rabbi Lezer, who says that if it's not square, even by one amma, we are not. One may not carry, and Rabbi Yossi says if even if its length is twice, metaltem eseichel.
So I think they have to take into account the shape of the watering hole or the mayim, because it could be might not be like, you might need the rectangle instead of a square. Well, let's see what they say.
Well, you're right according to Rabbi Yossi, but Rabbi Lezer says no. It has to be, the enclosure has to be a square.
All right, let's see where it goes.
Not the well itself, the enclosure.
No, I understand, but let's say
if the well itself is rectangular or square or round, it doesn't.
So then that means you're going to end up.
The issue is, you have to keep in mind, the issue is always that we always treat the well or the enclosure as reshus hayochid. It's a private domain. Problem is that it's inside a public domain. So what do you do? How can you drink from it? The moment you drink from it, you're taking from private to public. So they made an enclosure. They made those pasim, these boards.
Right.
So question is, if I make those pasim instead of square, rectangular. So Rabbi Yossi says it's not good. Rabbi Yossi says it's okay. Rabbi Lezer says it's not good.
All right, let's see where to go with it.
I heard from Rabbi Lezer, even if the karpaf is larger than as a base school, carrying is still permitted. I heard from him that the resident of a chotzer, one of whom forgot and did not join in the Eruv, his house is forbidden to carry into or out of from him. But for others it is permitted to carry into or out of his house. I heard from him that one can fulfill his obligation to eat maror on the first night of Pesach with our kabin. What's our kablin? So he writes in 19, our kablin is a creeping vine that grows around the date palm, and it has a bitter taste.
Right, that's why it could be more. Okay.
וחזרתי על כל תלמידיו, וביקשתי לחובר ולמצאתי, but I made the rounds of all his students, and I searched for a colleague to corroborate this, but I did not find anyone. It says he could not find any other of Rabbi Elazar's students who remembered hearing these 3 rulings from him. The Gemara says, Mai Tano Deksoni Ve'oid. What was taught previously in the Mishnah that our Mishnah teaches Ve'oid additionally? Where do you see the word Ve'oid? If you look at the Mishnah, it says Ve'oid Omar Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah starts with Ve'oid Omar Rabbi Yehuda. What is Ve'oid? Usually the Mishnah doesn't start that way. What was taught previously that the Mishnah start? If you said because Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava stated one stringency in the previous Mishnah, so now he's stating another one. That's the Ve'oid. And the Mishnah, and in our Mishnah teaches another stringency. Maybe that's why it says the Mishnah starts off with Ve'oid. But Rabbi Yehuda, who also stated the stringency in an earlier Mishnah, and he taught another stringency in his second Mishnah. And the Mishnah did not state additionally in preface to that ruling. So we see from, if you look at 24, it says, we see from this that the mere fact that both are stringencies is not sufficient reason to preface the second with ve'oid additionally, when the subject of the ruling are not related. So the Gemara answers that the preface additionally would be appropriate there too, except for the following. There the rabbis interrupted Rabbi Yehuda. 2 rulings with their response to him. Therefore, his second ruling, which was not continuous with the first, was not introduced as additionally. However, here the rabbis did not interpret Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava's ruling, and since his 2 rulings are continuous, the second ruling is introduced as additionally. So the Gemara says, 1 second. Everywhere that the rabbis interrupted, everywhere that the rabbis interrupted the Tana's ruling with a dissenting opinion, the Mishnah does not introduce the later ruling with additionally. Here's an example. One says, Rabbi Elazar the Sukkah. Rabbi Elazar's ruling in Masechta Sukkah, in Tractate Sukkah, in which the rabbis interrupted him, and yet the Mishnah introduces the second ruling of Rabbi Elazar's as additionally ve'oid. So the Gemara maintains its previous distinction and answers the objection raised. There they interpreted Rabbi Elazar only within the context of his statement, but did not digress to another matter. Therefore, the second ruling is introduced as additionally. Here, however, they also interrupted Rabbi Yehuda with different matter. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda's following ruling is not introduced as additionally. However, in the case of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava's ruling, no interruption of any kind intervenes, and the second ruling is therefore introduced as ve'oid additionally, even though the only feature it shares with the first is that both are stringencies. The Gemara introduces the next discussion with a quote from our Mishnah. So up till now, the Gemara was just trying to understand why the Mishnah started off with ve'oid. Rabbi Rabbi Akiva says that even if the karpaf, this enclosure, does not contain any of these, one may carry in it. What did we say? Rabbi Akiva. What did Rabbi? First of all, we said you need to have Goder Gavoya, a fence that is 10 tfachim, and maybe you should have a watchman's booth or base dira, or it should be close to the city. Rabbi Yehuda says if it has boyer, a pit, cave, you're allowed to metaltel. Rabbi Akiva says you don't need any of these, and you're allowed to metaltel. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva ainu Tanakama. So who is Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva representing the opinion of the Tanakama. The rabbis have already ruled that a karpaf is permitted up to 2 beisayas, even though it contains no area suitable for dwelling. What does Rabbi Akiva add to their ruling? What's the chiddush of Rabbi Akiva? Ika b'nayu dover mod. The difference between them is a small amount. The rabbis permitted a karpaf whose area does not exceed 2 beisayah, a full 5,000 square amas. However, Rabbi Akiva limits the maximum area of a karpaf to the square of 70 amas and a fraction, which is slightly less than 5,000 square amas. There's a small amount in excess of 70 amas and a fraction, which may be added to the maximum permitted length of the side of a square karpaf. But the sages did not specify its measure. And how much is the actual maximum area of a karpaf? The size of 2 seah equal to the area of the courtyard of the tabernacle, which was 5,000 square amas. 2 seahs, which we see now from the above that it's 70, a little bit more than 70 by 70 would yield 5,000 square amas. It says in number 4, the Brisa supports the contention that the rabbis permitted a karpaf whose area slightly exceeds the square of 70 2/3 amas permitted by Rabbi Akiva. So from where do we know this? Amar Yehuda, the Amar Kra, Rabbi Yehuda said, there is a pasuk, Erech hachotzer 100 v'ama v'roicha v'chamishim b'chamishim. The length of the courtyard was 100 ba'ama, was 100 amma, and the roicha, the width, was 50 by 50. Amar Torah 50 v'sar 50. Torah instructs, take 50 and surround 50. Take the 50 amas by which the courtyard's length exceeds its width, the area that the length exceeds the width, and distribute them around the other 50 amas to form a perfect square equaling 5,000 square amas. So the pasuk alludes by this to the significance of such a square is in some other matter of law. Pashtei dekrav maiksiv. The plain meaning of this verse. To what does it refer? Erech chotzer 100 v'amo v'roichav 50 b'chamishim. Amar Abaye amet mishkon lasfas 50. Pasuk instruct us to erect the tabernacle at the edge of 50 amas from the courtyard's entrance. Kedei shir 50 amo lefonav v'es amo lechoruach v'ruach. So that there will be an open area of 50 amas in front of it and 20 amas in each remaining side. So the Gemara introduces the next discussion with a quote from our Mishnah. Rabbi Lezer says if the length of the karpaf, this enclosure, exceeds its width, by even 1 amma, one may not carry in it. Rabbi Lezer says, but if the length was twice the width, even if it's twice the width, the length is twice the width, one may not carry in it even by 1 amma. Amar Viva Abaye, Nami was Nisi. In our Mishnah too, when it taught Rabbi Lezer's opinion, it taught about a karpaf whose length is more than twice its width. Only in this case does Rabbi Lezer forbid carrying. The Mishnah should be amended to be consistent with Rabbi Lezer's opinion in the Brisa. If so, this Rabbi Lezer's opinion is identical with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah, who also rules that the length of a karpaf may be up to twice its width. The difference between them is the square which the rabbis have squared. Rabbi Yossi recommends a square enclosure. Although rectangular enclosure is also acceptable, he recommends that if you're already making an enclosure, make it square. However, Rabbi Lezer holds that there is no preference for a square shape for a karpaf. The halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi that even a rectangular karpaf is permitted if its length is more than twice its width. Rav Bivi Omar Uda Amar Rav Bivi Omar Uda Amar Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Akiva, the halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, the karpaf without any kind of dwelling space is permitted. And both of the opinions of Rav Bivi and then Rabbi Uda and Rabbi Akiva, both the opinion of Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, it seems like they're both leniencies. Both of these rulings of Shmuel are said as leniencies. Utzricha, and the rulings, both rulings are necessary. The Yeshmin Lachak Rabbi Yossi, for if Shmuel had informed us. Only the halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi that even if the length is twice the width, it's still good. I might have said that it's only good if it contains watchman's hut or a dwelling. Therefore, it comes to tell us that halacha follows Rabbi Akiva that even if it doesn't have anything, it's still okay. And if Shmuel had just told me that halacha like Rabbi Akiva, it wouldn't mention the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi. I might have said that carrying karpaf, which is long and narrow, is not permitted because Rabbi Akiva specified the karpaf must have a square shape. Shmuel therefore informs us that halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. So we take both leniencies from each. We take the leniency of Rabbi Akiva that you don't have to have any kinds of dwelling inside the enclosure, and we take the leniency of Rabbi Yossi that it doesn't per se have to be. That it doesn't have to be square. The Gemara continues with another law regarding karpaf. I just want to check something. So in the introduction, the Gemara, it was mentioned about the karpaf. It says some areas are given, Carmelis status, even though they are enclosed within partitions, conforming to the rules set down for Rishus HaYochid. If an area larger than 5,000 square amos was enclosed for purposes not related to daily living, it is treated as a Carmelis despite its partitions. This will be explained further in the introduction, chapter 2, An area enclosed for non-residential purposes is generally referred to as karpaf. Common example of this is vegetable garden. So just something to remind ourselves, the definition of karpaf, area enclosed not for residential purposes. Okay?
Right.
Vegetable garden. But he also mentioned that the 5,000 square amas, which is like borders between a Carmelis and non-residential. Anyhow, so the Gemara continues with another law in the right column in 23b2. The Gemara says, Karpav shuyeser bebeis hasayim. What happened if it's more than 5,000 amas? Shiukaf ledira, which was enclosed for residential use, making it permissible to carry in it despite its size. Nizra, if a majority of it was then planted with vegetables, Hareu keginav also, it is like a garden, and carrying is prohibited throughout the karpaf, since a vegetable garden is not suitable for dwelling. Who lives in a vegetable garden?
Nobody.
The squirrels.
Squirrels and the birds.
However, if most of the karpaf was planted with trees, it is likewise a courtyard, and carrying is permitted, since people stroll in the wooden area. It is still considered enclosed for dwelling. The previous ruling stated that if most of it was planted with vegetables, carrying is prohibited throughout the karpaf. We do not say this except when the planted area is more than 2 beiseya, and therefore prohibited in its own right. This area in turn prohibits the remaining unplanted area which is open to it. However, if the planted area is exactly 2 beiseya, it's 5,000 square amas, carrying is permitted, since the garden area alone, here you have a diagram of beiseya, since the garden area alone is too small to prohibit carrying, the entire karpaf remains permitted. So the Gemara questions this view, Keman, according to whom is this ruling? Rabbi Shimon. This ruling follows Rabbi Shimon that now Rabbi Shimon says, Echod gagos, ve'echod chatzeros, ve'echod karpifios, ve'karpifois. Roof, chatzeros, and karpafs, this non-residential enclosures, reshus achasen. It's considered one domain. Hein lechelim it's considered one domain for the utensils, for articles which begin the Shabbos in them. At the onset of Shabbos, these articles were there. But not for articles which begin the Shabbos in a house. Rabbi Shimon rules that articles may be carried freely between different types of outdoor enclosures, provided that they were already present in them at the beginning of the Shabbos. Rav Huna's ruling, which permitted carrying in a karpaf, which contained 2 legally different areas, a garden, an unplanted residential area, must therefore be according to Rabbi Shimon, who permits carrying between different outdoor areas. The Rabbi Shimon Nami, but even according to Rabbi Shimon, if you look at 22, it says, it's long, but I just read part of it. It says this karpaf was originally enclosed for residential use. Usually karpaf, we said it's not residential. But now, this specific one was enclosed for residential use. That's why it says, hukaf ledira. They surrounded it, meaning they put walls, or double post, for dira. It was thus, in fact, a chotzer. The moment you're doing it for dira, then it becomes a chotzer. When he planted most of the area with vegetables, he converted that section into a karpaf not made for residential use. Although carrying should still be permitted in this non-residential karpaf, because it does not exceed 2 beiseya, so it's still under the 5,000 amas square, it can no longer be classified as a chotzer-like. Carrying from the residential part of the enclosure to the garden part of it is like carrying from a chotzer to a karpaf. Le Rabbi Shimon Nami, but even according to Rabbi Shimon, Keva de Nizra Rubai, since most of the karpaf was planted, Have Hahu Miuta, the lesser unplanted portion, Botile Legabe Ruba, that's a famous Botel Beroiv, the part that is unplanted is considered nullified to the majority that is planted. And now it becomes a karpaf that is more than 2 beiseya, more than 5,000 square amas, and therefore prohibited. Bruchim tiyu, and thank you all. We should continue, God willing, tomorrow. Stick around, we'll learn Shulchan Aruch.